In this video, I'm going to break down 4 things that I no longer do with my Turo fleet, why I don't do these things, and what I do instead. But before we dive into that, I do want to remind you guys that I have my course, the Car Sharing Masterclass, which teaches you everything that you need to know about starting and scaling a car sharing fleet, whether that be through Turo, through direct rentals, co-hosting, whatever the case may be. In the course, we teach you truly everything from how to buy cars, how to evaluate what is and is not a good deal, how to conduct a proper pre-purchase inspection, how to streamline your operations in order to make your business as semi-passive as possible, how to scale through financing or co-hosting with contractual templates included, and even how to diversify through avenues like direct rentals. When you're a course member, you get access to the course for life that includes all updates and iterations, which we are constantly updating it with new features, content, and more. You also get invited to our private communities and our monthly Zoom calls as well. You can use the code OFFER99 to get $99 off. The link is down in the description below. The first thing that I very rarely, if ever, do for my Turo and direct rental guests is offer roadside assistance. Now, there is a huge caveat here because no, I absolutely do not leave my guests hanging. Of course, with Turo, we have Turo Roadside, and with direct rentals, we do have a third-party roadside company that we work with. And if there is an issue with the guest, we will just direct them to their respective roadside contacts. But me or someone from my team does not personally go out to vehicles to troubleshoot issues like dead batteries, locked keys in the car, flat tires, or anything of the sort. We did offer this whenever we were first scaling our fleet, especially if we could see in the tracker that a guest wasn't that far away, but for the most part, we just have a blanket policy that we're not going to do this anymore. And the reason is very simple. It is just a significant time suck, and it is incredibly disruptive to our schedule. I'm a big believer that it's very helpful to have blanket policies within life and business of things that you either are or are not going to do under any circumstances. And we have just decided that offering roadside from our perspective of like us personally going out to the vehicle is something that we do not want to offer. And because of that, 99.9% of the time, it's just something that we do not do, and we will just direct the customer to roadside instead, even if that roadside wait is going to be significantly longer. The only time I'll personally deal with an issue is if we believe that it could potentially have been our fault, and Turo will blame us for the issue, and thus they'll charge us for the roadside. But in the grand scheme of things, this is quite rare and it only happens a couple of times a year. My perspective is I am paying for roadside, I want my guests to use it, and I am not a roadside mechanic. And neither is my husband or my employee, Todd. Another thing that I am not doing anymore, at least for the time being, is experimenting with unreliable cars. If a car is not one that we know is going to do well, not only from a performance perspective, but from a reliability perspective as well, then I don't even want to waste my time to consider it. Now, as I sit here today recording this video, my fleet sits at about 35 cars, and most of those vehicles is mid-tier to low-tier economy cars. And over the years, I've been super eager to experiment with different questionable cars that either would perform questionably on Turo or would have shoddy reliability. Things like Ford Fiestas, Mitsubishi Mirages, Ford Fusions, a BMW 3 Series. These are cars that I bought for one reason or another, but at the end of the day, they really don't fit our business model of ultra-reliable, low-end vehicles. But one thing that we have come to realize is that as our Turo fleet has gotten bigger and as we've gotten busier, these riskier cars are just a huge time suck. And in many cases, they have simply become a thorn in our side. The Fiesta's been fine only because we bought it with a brand new transmission, though I would never buy another one. I actually do like the Mirage, and I maybe would consider buying another one, but guest perception is shoddy at best, and in the first couple of trips, a guest overfilled the trans fluid and the trans had to be replaced. This was covered by Turo claims. And the Fusion is actually one that we are finally offloading because of the fact that it has been so problematic. The BMW is one I was very excited about when we got it, but it's constantly having minor issues, even though we got the timing chain replaced, knowing that that is typically the biggest issue with this car. But alas, it is still having problems. Now, we've had a pretty consistent philosophy with Turo, being as though we want the bulk of our fleet to be made up of our bread and butter, cars that we know are going to do well, we know how to work on them, they're reliable. But unfortunately, as time has gone on, the amount of cars that fall into our bread and butter category has inadvertently gotten smaller because of the fact that, you can't buy 2012 cars anymore. Soon you're not going to be able to buy 2013 cars. So as the requirement for Turo has changed, just as time has progressed, some of the cars that we really loved to rent on Turo are no longer eligible for Turo. And so as a result, we've been looking to diversify that a bit, and we have experimented in which cars we would want to add. And while I do think that we will continue to experiment cars for the sake of content, I think whenever it comes to these bread and butter vehicles, we are just going to stick to what we know works, and we're not going to be experimenting that segment of our fleet because it ends up just costing us too much time and too much money. This means sticking to Hyundais with rod-bearing recalls, Mazdas, of course Toyotas, and some miscellaneous other cars is where our focus is going to lie. Another thing that I generally try not to do is offer refunds. I really do not like offering refunds. And if we offer a refund, it either is one of two scenarios. It's a repeat guest that we want to keep happy, or it's a scenario where we have just completely dropped the ball. Neither of these happen frequently, but they of course occasionally do happen because with any business, refunds are going to be to an extent inevitable, but we do try to limit them as much as we can. Refunds may be requested for a number of reasons. Sometimes it's because guests are unhappy with their experience. Sometimes it's an issue with the car itself, either perceived or real. And other times it's just a guest being nitpicky. And of course, if there is a legitimate issue with a vehicle and with a rental experience, we will issue a refund if it's warranted because we're not evil. Now, typically, whenever a guest does ask for a refund, which again isn't something that happens all that frequently, but it does occasionally happen, we will just typically tell the guest, hey, you can return the car and get a refund for the unused days, and we'll just leave it at that. We'll let them decide how they want to proceed. But again, unless something really bad has happened, we will not just give them a flat out refund for the entire rental period. Now, typically, whenever it comes to returning the car for a refund of the unused days, that's what we'll suggest if we just feel like whatever solution we offer, the guest is not going to be happy. This is the case with like problematic guests. But if we have a guest who just like for whatever reason, the car that they're in isn't working, either because the car is having an issue or the guest just doesn't like it or whatever the case is, we will typically try to do a vehicle swap. And then that way the guests can continue with their rental. We'll take the car back and then no refund has to be issued at all. And of course, if there is that scenario where there is something wrong with the vehicle and the guest just cannot continue, we will try to bring a vehicle to them, do a vehicle swap so that they're not inconvenienced. And we may even offer them a 1-day refund for the inconvenience. Or if we don't have a vehicle available to swap them, we will actually go pick up the car from them, bring it back to our location, and offer them a 100% refund. And we'll even sometimes offer them a discount or a free rental in the future. Again, this isn't something that frequently happens at all, but generally speaking, we do try to go above and beyond to avoid giving that refund and instead try to mitigate the issue by either doing a vehicle swap or an early return, with the unused days being refunded instead of the whole trip. I generally don't like doing refunds because I think that guests are going to be unhappy whether they get a refund or not. There is, of course, going to be scenarios where giving a guest a refund is going to in turn give them a 5-star experience. But with a lot of the guests that we rent with, giving them a refund is not going to result in a 5-star. Instead, it's just going to result in lost earnings and a negative review. And so I would rather kind of hedge my bets and say, okay, I'm not going to give a refund and I'm just going to risk that negative review. Or I'm not going to give a refund and I'll just try to compensate it with a really good experience elsewhere, which does work as well. But my philosophy kind of lies with the idea that if the guest has the car, they're driving it, they're using it, they should be paying for it. And whether they pay for the full trip or partial trip, that kind of depends on the situation. The last thing that we don't do that we actually have experimented with over the years is providing anything extra. Things like charging cables, charging like ports, water bottles, whatever the case is. We don't do any of this stuff, and the reason is multifaceted. First, we offer cheap rentals, and the reality is, from a margin perspective, we need to keep our costs down. Maybe if we were renting $200 cars, I'd consider going the extra mile, but when we're renting cars for $35 per day, the cost and energy needed to keep up with these amenities is too much. But additionally is the complexities from an operational standpoint that these amenities add to the rental as well. Dealing with cords that may or may not work, testing those cords to ensure they work between rentals, dealing with cords that get stolen. It is just an extra thing to keep track of, and it is a huge pain in the butt. And last year, whenever Turo rolled out their new review requirements and metric standards, we actually bought a ton of cords and like cord ports and different amenities to include in rentals from the perspective of trying to get more 5 stars. And the one clear conclusion that I came to during that experiment is that the only thing worse than not including a charging cord in a rental car is including one that doesn't work. Guests very rarely complain about not having a charging cord, but guests very frequently complain about having one that doesn't work. Or from an operational perspective, it can also be a huge pain because whenever we're checking in and out cars, it's very, very common for us to be doing that in the middle of the day while we are doing another task. For example, if it's a Friday night and HP and I are going to dinner, we may check in a car quickly before we go to the restaurant. Or if it's a weekend and I'm running errands, I may pop by our lot or pop by our shop and check in a car quickly. And if I find that the charging cord is missing or it's broken and I don't have one on me, well, what do? Well, I have to go get one, find one, or I just leave it without. Or even just the simple task of remembering to check whether these charging cords work or not. It is just something that is a much larger pain than you think it would be. I am such a believer in taking out aspects that make your life and business operations harder, and this is especially true if that doesn't really add a ton of value to your overall operations. I am sure there are guests who get into our cars and wish that we had charging ports and charging cords, but that's okay. Like always, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it. So make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.